It was a Friday night, and I was home alone, just trying to unwind after a long week at work. The rain was coming down hard, so I decided to order food instead of cooking. I went on DoorDash, ordered some Thai, and settled in to watch TV while I waited. I live in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where nothing ever happens. And with the storm raging outside, I didn't expect anything to break the silence, aside from the knock on the door when my food arrived. About 20 minutes later, I got the notification. Your dasher is approaching. Perfect timing. I glanced out the window, but with all the rain and darkness, I couldn't see much. I heard a knock on the door right on time, but something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. Maybe it was just the eerie quiet outside, or the way the rain made everything look blurred and distorted. Either way, I hesitated for a second before getting up. When I finally did, I peeked through the peephole like I always do. There was a man standing there, holding a delivery bag just like I expected. But something about him didn't sit right with me. He wasn't wearing a DoorDash uniform, just a black hoodie that was soaked from the rain. That's not necessarily a red flag. Most DoorDashers don't wear uniforms. But when I looked at his face, he wasn't smiling, wasn't even looking at the door. He was just standing there, staring down the street, almost like he was waiting for something. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I know it sounds ridiculous, but in that moment, everything inside me screamed not to open the door. But I had ordered food, and it made no sense to be freaked out over a delivery. I cracked the door open, the chain still on. "Hey, thanks," I said, my voice steady. "Can you just leave it on the porch?" He turned slowly to face me, and his expression was blank, too blank. "I need to hand it to you," he said, his voice low, almost mechanical. I hesitated. "That's fine. Just leave it out here. I'll grab it." He didn't move. He just stood there, staring at me through the crack in the door. "You need to open the door," he said again, more insistent this time. I glanced down at his hands. The bag didn't even have the restaurant's logo on it, just a plain brown paper bag, crumpled and wet from the rain. That was when I noticed something else. There was no car in my driveway, no delivery car at all. My heart started racing. DoorDash drivers always pull up to the house, but there was nothing, no sign of anyone else. Just him, standing there, insisting I open the door. I shut it quickly, sliding the deadbolt across. "I'll just call DoorDash and have them sort it out," I said, trying to keep the fear out of my voice. There was a long pause on the other side of the door, and then I heard him shift his weight. "I can't leave it out here. It's policy," he said, almost irritated now. He knocked again, harder this time. I didn't respond. I stepped back from the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear him moving around on the porch, but I didn't dare open it again. After what felt like forever, the knocking stopped. I peeked out the window, but he was gone. No man, no bag, nothing but the rain. I grabbed my phone and checked the DoorDash app to see if there had been some kind of mix-up. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. The app said my order had been canceled 20 minutes ago. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it. If the order had been canceled, who the hell had just knocked on my door? I called DoorDash immediately, and they confirmed what I already knew. My driver never made it to the house. There had been no delivery, no mix-up. Whoever had shown up at my door wasn't from DoorDash. He had been pretending to be. The realization made my skin crawl. I checked all the locks, turned off the lights, and sat in silence, listening for any sounds outside. I didn't hear him again, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't far away, watching, waiting for me to make a mistake. I never did find out who he was or what he wanted. But I'll tell you one thing. Ever since that night, I'm a lot more careful about who I open the door for. And whenever I order delivery now, I make sure to wait until I see the car pull up before I even think about answering. It was supposed to be an easy week. My parents were out of town on vacation, and they finally trusted me enough to leave me home alone. 17, old enough to take care of myself, right? I was excited. No rules, no curfews, just me and some horror movies to binge watch. Plus, the storm outside made it the perfect night to relax. It had been raining nonstop for hours, and I was halfway through a movie when the power suddenly went out. No warning, just pitch black. My phone's flashlight barely cut through the darkness, and all I could hear was the heavy rain and distant thunder. I figured it was the storm knocking the power out, so I lit a couple of candles and settled back on the couch, waiting for the lights to come back on. But then I heard something. At first, it was hard to make out over the rain, but there was a sound, a knocking. I thought maybe it was just a branch hitting the house. But then I heard it again, more deliberate, like someone was knocking on the front door. I froze. Who would be out in this weather? Reluctantly, I got up and peeked through the peephole. Standing there on my porch, soaked from head to toe, was a man. He was probably in his 30s, and he looked nervous, anxious even. I didn't open the door right away. "Who is it?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. The man leaned closer to the door, trying to shelter himself from the rain. "Hey, sorry to bother you, but my car broke down a little ways down the road. I tried my phone, but it's dead. Can I come in and use yours to call for help?" I hesitated. Something didn't feel right. There was no car visible from my house, no headlights, no signs of anything at all. It was just him standing there in the rain, dripping wet. "Where's your car?" I asked, still not opening the door. He gestured vaguely behind him, toward the street. "It's a little further down, just past the bend. You probably can't see it from here because of the rain." I bit my lip, considering. My parents always told me never to let strangers in, no matter what. But he seemed desperate, and I didn't want to leave him stranded in a storm. Still, something was off. Why was he alone? Why wasn't he trying to flag down another car? "I'm sorry," I finally said, "but I can't let you in. I can make the call for you, though. Just tell me who to contact." He frowned, and for a split second, his expression changed. It was subtle, but it sent a shiver down my spine. He forced a smile and nodded. "That's fine. Could you call a tow truck for me?" "My name's Chris." I nodded, trying to hide how unsettled I felt. "Sure, just give me a second." I closed the door and locked it. Then I went to grab my phone. I wanted to check if there were any tow services that could come out. But as I was about to make the call, I realized something. There were no footprints. The rain was coming down hard. But when I looked through the peephole again, I saw nothing. No muddy tracks, no tire marks. Nothing to suggest this guy had come from a broken-down car. He was just standing there, completely still. My heart started pounding in my chest. Why wasn't there any sign of his car? That's when he knocked again, louder this time, more impatient. "Hey, did you make the call?" His voice was calm, but there was something off about it, like he wasn't really worried about his car. I didn't answer. I backed away from the door, moving as quietly as I could. I needed to think. My phone's flashlight barely illuminated the room, and with the power out, it felt like I was trapped in a dark box with this guy just outside. Another knock, louder this time. "Hey, I know you're still there. Just open the door, okay? I really need to get inside." His voice was different now, more forceful. I held my breath. He sounded angry. Why did he need to get inside so badly? My gut told me something was very wrong. I tried to dial 911, but just then I heard something that made my blood run cold. A sound came from the back of the house, like the creak of a door. I turned, heart racing, and realized the back door was slightly ajar. I knew I had locked it earlier. I rushed over and slammed it shut, locking it again, but now my mind was racing. Had he somehow gotten back there? Was someone else involved? The knocking on the front door stopped, and everything was eerily quiet. I didn't dare move. I stood there, waiting, listening for any sign of him. Minutes passed. Nothing. I finally worked up the courage to peek through the front window just to see if he was still there. But when I looked out, he was gone. No man, no car, no footprints. Just the empty, rain-soaked street. I don't know what his plan was, but I'm glad I never let him in. I never saw him again, and I didn't sleep at all that night. But to this day, every time it rains, I can't help but wonder what would have happened if I had opened that door. You know how sometimes you just get that gut feeling, like something is off? That's exactly how I felt the entire night. I should have just listened to it. So, this happened last year when I went on a Tinder date. I wasn't even that into him, but I had been single for a while, and my friends kept pushing me to put myself out there. I figured, why not? His name was Jared, and at first, he seemed normal enough. We met at a coffee shop, and he seemed a bit quiet, but polite. Maybe just shy. But halfway through the date, something felt weird. He kept staring at me, not in a flirty way. More like he was studying me. His eyes were cold, like he wasn't even seeing me. Just some version of me that he'd created in his head. I told myself I was just being paranoid. The date ended, and we said goodbye in the parking lot. I got into my car and drove home, but as soon as I pulled into my driveway, I had this weird feeling, like something wasn't right. I brushed it off again, locked the door behind me, and went inside. I live alone, so I always make sure everything is locked up tight. Plus, it was raining that night, heavy, with that constant tapping on the windows. You know, the kind of night that makes you want to curl up with a blanket and forget the world outside exists. But as I was about to turn in for the night, I saw something out of place, out of the corner of my eye, from the kitchen window. I could swear I saw someone standing by the street, just for a second. I blinked, and no one was there. My heart started racing. I told myself it was just my imagination. The date had put me on edge, that's all. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I double-checked all the doors and windows. Everything was locked. I even checked under my bed and in the closets, just to be sure. When I was convinced I was being ridiculous, I finally settled into bed. That's when I heard it. A light tapping at the window. I froze. At first, I thought it was just the rain, but the taps were too rhythmic, too deliberate. I didn't move, barely even breathed. Then the tapping turned into scratching, like nails dragging across the glass. I had no idea what to do. My phone was on the other side of the room. I didn't want to get out of bed, didn't want to look. But I forced myself. Slowly I crawled out and tiptoed toward the window, heart pounding in my chest. As I got closer, I could see something on the window. There, pressed against the glass, was a hand. I screamed and ran for my phone, dialed 911 and told them someone was trying to break in. They told me to stay on the line until they arrived, so I did. But as I was waiting for the police, the scratching stopped. When they arrived, they found nothing. No sign of forced entry, no footprints outside the window, nothing. They told me I was probably just imagining things. But I know what I saw. The worst part? The next morning I got a message from Jared on Tinder. Had fun last night. Sleep well? I deleted the app immediately.